And good evening, everyone. TJ Alls of I-45 Now and Clear Lake Now. Thanks for joining us as we continue our ongoing coverage of local elections happening in your area. Our job is to provide you information from the various candidates. Tonight, starting with this first one, and then we'll have another forum right afterwards featuring the candidates for mayor and city council in the city of Nassau Bay. This full disclosure to everyone here, I am a resident of Nassau Bay, in fact, and a division of our company does production for the city. However, that's part of our company that I actually don't run, but I am a resident of the city now. So most of these folks I see around town and see their political signs everywhere as well in my daily life. But we really wanted to bring in the candidates so you get to hear from them before early voting begins next week. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful Easter as well. As I said, we've divided the forum up into two parts here today. The first part, we're going to be featuring the single candidate for mayor who's agreed to be part of this, the candidates for position 2 on the city council, and then the one candidate from position 6 who agreed to join us here today. Let me introduce those to you now. For the candidate for mayor, Mark Denman is with us here, former mayor of the city of Nassau Bay, running for election again. Phil Johnson, who is the other candidate and who sits on the city council now, declined to participate in the forum tonight. Then from position 2, we have all three of the candidates participating with us tonight. They are Micheli. Thank you, Michelle, for being here with us. Lucie Sommer, and then Bob Wilkinson. Thank you three for being with us here tonight as well. And then we hope he'll join us here shortly is Matt Pryor, councilman, position 6. And then his challenger, Michelle Weller, also declined to be part of the forum tonight. When Matt does log in, we'll let him in. If not, then we'll just kind of move on. That's why we wanted to start on time. And again, then the candidates for position 4 will join us at 7:15 here tonight for that forum. You'll get another alert for those of you watching on our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter channels here with us. So with all of that out of the way, let's get right into this here. And I wanted to talk just in general terms, get a feel. I'll start with you, Michelle, here. What prompted you to run for the position here on city council?
Well, I haven't attended that many city council meetings. I have been involved a little bit just from my son attending the St. Thomas Episcopal School and Church. We're members there. And we've had some candidates serve on the board. And I just kind of see that I wanted to join the council just to provide a different perspective and a different view. I've only been in Nassau Bay since 2014, but I love the community and I love the area. And I just want to keep it small, quaint, a place where, we can invite new families to come in so we can, grow within our community. Because I know some of the residents, are going through and, unfortunately, we have older residents that are leaving. And so we just want to make sure that we can still attract a younger population as well to kind of keep Nassau Bay, basically.
The same question to you, Lucie. What prompted you to go ahead and throw your hat into the ring?
Well, I've lived here since 2006, and I even spent time in the neighborhood before that with my grandma and my aunt and uncle and cousins, and I really love Nassau Bay. And I've just noticed that lately things have seemed a little bit different in the political climate, and so I wanted to get involved to start helping and see what I can do to bring people together. I also recognize that there are still original owners that live in this neighborhood, but the demographics are definitely changing, and so I want to help balance those things together. I've also started to get really interested in the infrastructure of the city. So I know that we have a lot of big infrastructure projects going on, as well as things that we've done in the past and need to do in the future for stormwater mitigation. And I thought I had a lot to add in those areas as well. So I decided to run.
Great. Thanks for that. And Bob, same question to you. What prompted you to throw your hat into the ring here?
Well, we currently moved to Nassau Bay about approximately 3 years ago to be close to our grandchildren, and discovered a beautiful part of town called Nassau Bay. And I got immediately involved by serving on 2 committees, the Parks Committee and the Tourism Committee. And the reason I'm running is to bring transparency back into City Council based on some things that have happened here that I'm sure none of us agree with, but it's time to bring transparency back and get city council working to move Nassau Bay forward. Thank you.
And Bob, one of the things is I'll have you, and I know it's tough when you've got these setups on there. Your camera is actually a little to your left, so you want to look that way when you're talking. That way, you're looking at the camera a little bit more. Mark, similar question to you, but let me just ask this: you had just stepped down, didn't run for re-election. You were term limited, obviously, but didn't run for re-election for mayor the last time around. Obviously, you were term limited. Why come back and try run for mayor again, and particularly this time?
Well, I'd served 18 years, and I felt I had done my duty and served my time. But I was somewhat disillusioned with occurrences that happened. Some of that is directly related to the former city manager. And I felt getting back on council, I could help, between that city manager and council and build that relationship back again. And of course, the relationship was severed in November. And I had a groundswell of individuals that approached me and said, "We don't want you running for council. We want you to run for mayor." And it was a broad spectrum of individuals from different directions. And they talked to me about it. And as I looked more and thought more about it, and that I knew that Mayor Waters was not going to run again, I felt I had the best opportunity to come in and resolve many of the issues, the deep divisiveness that we were seeing. And I feel I'm the most capable to pick up where I left off. And by the way, when I left, we had a very harmonious city, very financially sound city. Staff and council worked well together, and we were being very, very proactive in doing new things. And I've seen a significant slowdown in that progress. And so that's why I decided to run again. I love Nassau Bay like everyone else. I've been here since 1985, and I've never seen more promise for the city and opportunity for it to be even greater than it is now. I just don't want it to see it go backwards. I know I can reverse any current trends and get the ship rightened.
And that you brought up something about the city manager. Well, let's moving forward here. Paul McClarty, who is now the assistant district superintendent for CCISD over operations there, used to work for Galveston County in the county judge's office. Now he is the new city manager. And while I'm saying this, by the way, we should point out that Matt Pryor is joining us now. Matt, if I can go ahead and ask you if you can get your screen turned sideways there, we have a better view of you horizontal that way. Yes, take out the ceiling fan. So Matt, thanks for joining us. He's councilman, position 6. Before I get to that next question, folks, let me go ahead and give Matt a chance here. Matt, we've just got our first question underway here. So thanks for joining us. But what prompted you, to decide to go ahead and run for re-election in this race?
Yeah, my apologies for being late. Just double checking. You can hear me okay?
Yes, sir. You sound fine.
All right, fantastic. No, I never had any question about running for re-election. It was, a position that I've really enjoyed for the last 4 years, and I think we've been able to make some great progress in certain areas, and there's still a lot more to be done. And I think that's one of the things that's really attractive about volunteering to be on city council, is to see some of the fruits of your efforts, but also, really hearing from the residents and trying to drive some improvements. So I think all of that kind of combined are the reasons that I'm interested in being reelected to council.
Gotcha. As I was saying when you logged on and moving forward, Paul McClarty has been hired as the new city manager, starts June 1st. Lucie, let me start with you on this and get your take on what do you know of the new city manager? What do you think of the process used to hire him in this position? And are you confident that this is the person that can move things forward, as Mark and some others have referenced, where things got kind of out of hand maybe sometimes, or less than transparent before? What's your take on that process, and what do you look forward to and goals for the new city manager?
So the new city manager is not someone that I knew of prior to his selection. I do know that they used an outside company, had an extensive process for doing it. I know there was a little bit of questioning of the timing of it with a new city council and mayor being elected, but I think we really needed to move forward and get a new city manager. I'm happy to see that. I know that we've put a lot of stress on our current staff as it is, so I'm happy to see that we do have a new city manager coming in. I actually look forward to this as being an opportunity for us to all come together and stand behind this new person. It sounds like the folks that did the interviewing, the city staff that met him, he was generally liked by everybody. There didn't seem to be any problems with him. And I'm hoping that that means we can use this as an opportunity to come together and use the city manager to help us bring Nassau Bay forward, keep things moving, work on projects that are important to us as a city, and bring the community back together again.
Matt, let me ask you, you were part of that process of hiring him. What do there was, as Lucie had mentioned, there was concerns by some, like, okay, putting in someone before the next council gets to come in if there was a changeover and the like. But you confident in that, in how the process went, and looking forward to moving forward now with Paul in the position when he starts June 1st?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it's something that I relied on my entire career being in human resources, and spent some time with him, heard feedback from the staff that spent a really good quality time and really peppered him with questions. And I think he's absolutely qualified for the job. I think that there are some things he's going to have to learn, and we're going to have to see what we can do to make his transition as seamless as possible. And I think, like Lucie was saying, the impact on the staff, I don't think can really be overstated. And I think it's really important to understand the pressure and the stress that not having a leader in that position has had on a variety of members of staff. And I think the chief's done a phenomenal job as the interim, but this really is an opportunity to bring someone with leadership behaviors and background into the role and really try to bring the community forward and make some real improvements. So I'm certainly excited about him as a candidate.
And you should point out, you pointed out there's some things he has to learn, is that while Paul's lived in this area for many, many years and knows kind of the ins and outs of certain communities, he's never worked in a city government before in any type of management capacity, county government, and obviously running an operation of the size that he has in Clear Creek ISD, gives him some experience. But let me ask you, Mark, as you know, if you're elected and you come back in as mayor, you've got a new city manager used to. Are you prepared for that? And what are your goals set as mayor if you're elected to back to office that you want to see Paul accomplish?
Well, I've been either mayor pro tem or mayor during the last two transitions of city managers. And in either case, staff or council never missed a step. It was a very successful transition. We were very fortunate to hire outstanding individuals. Of course, John Kennedy was my first known city manager, and I was a little bit involved with his hiring, but I was very directly involved with Chris Reed and Jason Reynolds. And we've just been very fortunate to pick very wisely. I see no issue in the transition from Jason to Mr. McClarty. I haven't met him yet, haven't spoken to him yet, but in speaking to staff, I hear the same thing as Matt said. They need leadership. They like him. They know of him. He's a known commodity. And I look forward to him hitting the ground. And I think my background will eliminate a lot of relearning or orientation that would normally somebody who's not experienced in this role would do. So I think I'm the best qualified for a quick transition, very efficient transition, seamless transition.
And Michelle, if you're elected to council, what are your goals going to be, and also what do you think of the process that brought in the new city manager?
Well, I agree with Lucie and what Matt said. I mean, we kind of needed to move forward on this. We couldn't really wait to elect a new mayor and city council because the city does need it. And I think it just speaks a lot to the division of the city right now because of what happened with the prior city manager. And I'm personally just ready to move forward. I don't want to keep looking back at the emails or the gossip or the talk. I'm excited to have somebody new. I personally don't know him either, but if I were elected to city council, I would definitely just try to be as supportive as I can. just from dealing with all my clients. A lot of times, you just need to listen. You got to learn. I would be brand new as well. So communication to me would be key. Transparency is key because sometimes you're not able to make the right choice if you don't really know the entire background of it. So I would definitely be here to support him as much as I could, anytime that seems feasible. But I agree with everybody. We needed to move forward. And I think this is a great step heading that way. And hopefully this will stop all the back talk and chatter about everything else that's happened.
A lot of that in those small towns. Bob, same question to you.
Again, just what everybody said. I have not met Paul yet, but he is obviously very, very well qualified. His resume speaks for itself. And I think where he's going to need some help is finding out what exactly is the ins and outs of Nassau Bay. And I think as a city councilman, the main thing we can do is help Paul become acclimated to what the nuances of Nassau Bay are and some of the long-term planning, like the home elevation and infrastructure programs that we currently have going, and basically stay out of the way of the day-to-day operations and don't get involved in that, because that is not city council's job. Our job is to provide leadership and oversight to the city manager, and that's what it's all about. Thank you.
And you brought up what was going to be the next question I was going to ask all of you here, and so let me start with you on this one, Bob. Is there are times that you have, in some communities will have a strong mayor, form of government, or a mayor and the city administrator. Obviously, the form of government in Nassau Bay is council and a city manager, form of government. They hire the city manager, supposed to run the day to day. As you see that, how hands off or how hands on should members of council be in the operations all along? Should it be just set policy, or should you be also a bullhorn for folks in the community that may not think they're getting the response they should get from City Hall? And I'll start with you on that, Bob.
Okay, basically, the city charter states that the city council is an oversight position to the city manager. We are a strong city manager government, form of government. Oversight is what the city council does. And I think that we do have to become involved, but not in the day-to-day nitpicky little things that go on day-to-day. That's what caused some of the problems that brought all of this to a head. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it came out. It shouldn't be that way, because again, we should let the city manager do his job. He gets evaluated on a regular basis. If there's a problem, then it should be talked about and it should be handled that way, not the way it was previously in the past. But it is time to put that behind us and move forward. He seems like he's got a very good resume, and hopefully we can all work together and get our community back on the right track. Thank you.
Michelle, same question to you. Is that how should that relationship between council members and the city manager be? Should it be strictly we're going to set a policy, you go implement it, we're going to give you a budget, you go implement it, or should there be more of that hands-on, and it depends on how much of a hands-on would you see as your role if elected to council?
Well, I mean, I think it just depends on the situation and what we are talking about in that particular time. I think you kind of need both. I think you kind of need the city manager to do what the city manager needs to do based on policy. But I do think as city council members, we are here to represent the people, and we got to hear what they have to say. And we got to help the city manager guide them towards maybe just a more objective outlook where we can have like open discussion, open conversation, and maybe decide why, that's not a good thing to do. Maybe do the pros and the cons. I mean, we can't just shut people down because of their opinions, and we can't just set somebody with policy going forward without us fully understanding and have the citizens fully understand. But they also have to understand the process of how we came about to that particular decision. And I think with the city manager being new, I mean, he is going to need a lot of help, and he is going to need some guidance, like Bob said. So we have to provide that as well. I mean, they may not know. Like I said, my main thing is just not to get stuck in the past. We just have to move forward. And like, everybody has said on here, We just have to elevate Nassau Bay to the way that it was and not get caught in the nitpicky, gossipy of one side versus the other side. We just really have to move forward and help our neighbors and help our, just help everybody in Nassau Bay.
Gotcha. Lucie, same question to you of, where do you see your role if elected to council of how that relationship needs to be between council and the city manager? Is it total hands off, some hands on, policy only and budget only, and then go from there? How do you see your role on council?
So the city manager should not need to be micromanaged going forward every day. And I think that that's something that most people are agreeing on here. But the city council also doesn't need to be a rubber stamp. We need to be educated in that oversight role. And we need to make sure that communication between the city manager and city council is open and it represents what the people of Nassau Bay want. And they understand everything is open communication and all parties are partnering together to do what's best for the city.
Let me do a quick follow-up with you on that, though, Lucie. How does one determine what the citizens of Nassau Bay want?
That's the role of city council, is to represent the people of Nassau Bay. And so hopefully people feel comfortable going up to their city council members. I know sometimes people email, call, communicate in whatever ways they need to make sure that if they have issues, those are getting elevated. There are also times when people come to the city council meetings and express their opinions that way, but we need to make sure we're including the opinions of everybody, not just the loudest or the ones that are friends with the city council, that sort of thing. So open to everybody.
Gotcha. Mark, you've been in this role several times, both as a council member and mayor. What's your approach to that as far as how the council and the relationship with the city manager should be and how those duties are handled and separated?
Well, the accurate description for our city government is called a weak mayor form of government. And you say it a strong council. I've heard it both ways. And so when people ask me, what does that mean? I go, well, it's like having a board of directors and a chairman of the board of a corporation. You hire the president or the city manager, and you charge that president with executing the duties and strategy that laid out by council. And so I know it's repeating ad nauseum, but micromanaging is a horrible thing to do for a professional city manager. When someone comes on board with professional skills, which I believe Mr. McClarty has, he doesn't need people looking over his shoulder in that office every day trying to tell him how to do his job. And again, as Bob spoke, it's in the charter. It's very clear on the delineation between a city manager and council. Of course, there is input that council will take from citizens. As a matter of fact, I'm proposing more town hall meetings to get such input. And I think the more will be needed early on for the new city manager to get to know the citizens, get to understand their needs and get a feel for the city. And so at that time, there's great input that both council and city manager will both get at the same time. Council can narrow it down, focus the strategy, lay out the strategy, and of course, with the concordance with the city manager, ask him to execute his, based on what we've all agreed to. So it's a balancing act, but for the most part, let the city manager do his job, but making sure he keeps on the rails and keep him apprised of any changes of feelings by council or input from citizens.
Matt, similar question, but you're an HR expert. In fact, and I don't want to spend too much on the past here, but some of the past can help us help voters make a decision for the future. In that you were in the rooms when evaluations were being done, and some of these discussions were being done that may have led to kind of the upheaval that we saw in November. What as a council member, what do you think your approach, and also bringing your HR hat on at the same time, of how that relationship should be between the elected governing body and the hired professional that's, in this case, the city manager?
Yeah, similar to some of the other responses, I think it's really important for council to be respecting the city manager's role, but then also be there and be very supportive if they need help. We've got a phenomenal group of volunteers that support the city day in and day out. And I think that there's a lot of expertise in the room and a variety of different topics. There's different engineers. We've had CPAs. We've got people like me that have an HR background, and we're all able to step in and help when it's needed and when it's asked for. And I think that it's just important that we're there as a resource to help guide and direct, but not necessarily tell them the city manager how to do his job or any of the city staff. And I think that there's a variety of ways that we can engage the city residents in the communication and helping their views get heard by the staff that's pursuing some of the day-to-day strategy actions.
Do you think at times, though, Matt, you've seen where the council or some members of council have overstepped their bounds and have gotten in more micromanaging?
Absolutely. And I think that there's an ongoing discussion about trying to find that right balance. And there's some topics where, I've seen individuals get really, really involved. And there's other topics where we should have been more involved. And I think that's just overall the opportunity for council to come together, work as a team to represent the residents that are electing us, and try to, again, maintain and improve the city at the same time.
Gotcha. And next topic up, and Michelle brings up a good point. I don't want to dwell on the past, want to move forward, but there's something in the past we need to, and this is about open government. To clear the air on any of this, there's nothing that the council did as far as having the power to say we want to make a change in government in our leadership as city manager. That's an absolute power of the city council, no doubt about it. The biggest complaint I hear from most folks is that this was kind of done in secret and it came as a surprise. You were in those rooms when it was going on, and you and another council member seemed to think it was a surprise to y'all as well. Do you think there needs to be an improvement in how the council governs itself on when it comes to transparency about particularly major decisions on things that go on?
I think that there's an absolute opportunity to be more transparent. That's one of the most frustrating years, or by far the most frustrating year on council. For the first 3 years, we were working together to try to solve some issues and having some good challenge of ideas. But then within the last 12 months, it seems like there's a council within a council. And that's been extremely frustrating for me. And that I've been trying to address and haven't been able to make as many inroads as I'd like. And I'm really optimistic that we're going to be able to make improvements with the new mayor, whoever that is, and the new council members. And I think that there's really an opportunity to put the city first and some of our own personal preferences aside and really try to work together as a team to drive some of the improvements that are needed in the city.
If I can get you to define, you said a council within a council. What does that mean exactly?
It seems like there's certain members on council that are making decisions without informing all 7 members, which is, again, one of the requirements in my understanding of the charter. And it just doesn't feel like that's been done in every opportunity.
And just to kind of clarify and drill down on this, because this is about open government, that those decisions are being made in absence of a meeting or just being kind of done to the side or how, just so I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that, it was not part of an agenda or even an executive session. It was a decision that was made outside of, again, the review of everyone on council.
Gotcha. Michelle, let me ask you about that. It just, and you can talk about this topic, look at the past, but focusing forward on, your commitment to open government, how things should be, fit and moving forward. So let me give you a chance to talk about that. Is what do you see as open government and transparency as you move forward?
Well, I mean, just like we've talked about, moving forward and, just more, kind of like what Matt was saying, having more town halls, having more people come and base their opinions. I mean, I was there, when we had that big city council meeting. I think it was like around December, maybe. We were talking about the kids course, and then, the citizens were kind of voicing their opinion about what had happened with the city manager. It was really hurtful as a citizen just because it was so divided. I agree with Matt. I think there's like different camps within the camp. And, I think that some people decided to do something that was probably not to the best interest or not fully discussed. Or, as Matt's an HR manager, I don't understand how we go from given this person great reviews and a raise and everything else, and a month later they're gone. And that, did he need to be in a plan of improvement? Were there some things that needed to be done, more diligently, rather than all of a sudden we just get this news that he is no longer with us, and there's a gag order and people can't talk and there's emails going on. I mean, as a city, that just seems really disruptive and really immature in a way. And I think that, if I become part of city council, then I will for sure try to share and have open and honest communication with people, because I think that is key, especially in this day and age. You need to have open forums. You need to have people speak and lay out whatever they need to say, whether they're right or wrong. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. And if it was done behind the scenes and it was done like that, I mean, then that's truly not a good city council. They're not a good representative of us.
And I would take it then you would pledge to not let something like that happen on your watch.
100%. I mean, if you can vote, I mean, if you're there, but if it's done without you being there, then that's a concern. I would definitely not want anything like that to happen. I mean, that's the reason why you have a city council. That's the reason why you have votes. That's the reason why you have a charter. And that's the reason why you have things in place not to let that happen. You can't just let a set group of people take over a council and make their own decisions.
Gotcha. Lucie, same question to you about open government. You can address it, either looking at the past or just looking at the future, how you would approach it if elected to council.
Well, I think, yes, communication is one of the biggest things that we need to focus on going forward. Sharing information helps prevent assumptions and misinformation from getting out there, because when the assumptions and misinformation get out, that's what leads to the frustration that we've been talking about. So the more that we can share, the better we can build relationships, the better we will be going forward. So I would like to see as much information as possible shared with everyone in the community.
Bob, your approach to that. I know you spoke out about, that one of the biggest problems you had at one of the council meetings was you thought things were being done in the dark. And so if you're elected, how are you going to change that?
Well, first of all, we have to learn from the past to go forward. I am all for going forward. I think we need to give this new manager a chance and see what happens and go forward. But I will say this, for what the council did, and Matt Pryor just alluded to certain things. What they did was illegal. You cannot have council members getting together off campus and saying, here's what we're going to do. Gee, I got the votes. I'm going to fire the city manager over a monument or the kid course. And that's all it was. I've attended every city council meeting for the last year, and I'm the only one who I think can say that. And I listened, and people, they knew what they were doing to Jason. It was wrong. It was totally wrong. It was totally illegal for what they did. I also serve on the Parks Committee. We made a recommendation. We studied the parks equipment for 8 months. They told our committee to go jump in the lake and paid no attention to what we said at the meeting. And the mayor pro tem and mayor said, no, we're going to do something different. Thanks for all your work. No, they didn't even say thanks for all our work that we did for 8 months studying a program. If you appoint a volunteer on a committee and you don't take their recommendations, why have a committee?
But and I can understand your frustration there, but in the long run, that's council's final say on that.
Sure, it's council's final say. I'm not saying that. I agree. It is council's final say to hire and fire the city manager. But the way it is done has to be according to the rules and regulations.
And I'm talking about the recommendations from the committee that on the Parks Committee that you had said.
Again, it's their decision. You're right.
It's frustrating. You sit on that committee and you hear your recommendation.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating to 10 people who sat on the Parks Committee and discussed it for over 8 months and went and spent hours and hours going through it, and then to be told it doesn't matter. We're going to do what we want to do.
Gotcha. How would and y'all can volunteer either way on this, of if you see something similar that you think is wrong and you're on council, how are you going to deal with it? And I'll start with you first, Mark, as mayor. If you think fellow council members are doing something that's improper or illegal,
well, of course, I would of course address it right away, but it didn't happen under my leadership while mayor. At least if it did, I wasn't aware of it. And if it had any impact on votes, I was not aware of it. But in my website, the first 2 points, and I'll just read them off verbatim of how I'd handle this. First, I'd conduct a public session on the charter requirements and roles for mayor, council, and city manager. We need to make sure everybody's educated on what that role is. But the second point in my bullets is conduct a public session to review all laws pertaining to legal, illegal deliberation, what constitute a walking quorum. I want to have our city attorney make sure everyone is aware of what's allowed and what's not allowed, so some folks can't plead that, sorry, they just did not know any better. And if we follow those rules, we won't have these problems. And I can assure you, I'll make sure council follows all those rules as your mayor.
Gotcha. We'll go on from that topic now. And one, I know, Lucie, you brought this up first, but I'm going to start with Mark on this. It's about infrastructure. We are seeing, Mark, a lot of throughout town, some older infrastructure just fail on us. It seems like when it fails in one part of town, it starts like a domino, a cascade effect, and we're starting to see people's yards get torn up and corners get torn up and streets get torn up and on any given day, or you're wading through water on a street. Where do you think it stands on infrastructure in the city as it stands? And if you're elected mayor, what are you going to push as a plan forward to get either a solid CIP plan in place to get these things done on a timely manner?
Well, that plan's already in place. We've been working on infrastructure since I've been on council or as mayor. The current wave of phase one and the replacing of the water sewer lines, we started this back in 2016, 2017, setting up ways to pay it, lining up, making sure we knew where to address this. This is not an overnight, all of a sudden, they're digging in the ground, putting in pipes. We've identified 5 key phases for replacing our 50-plus year water and sewer lines. And we know this has been an important aspect for years. While I was as mayor, it was a very consensus, harmonious agreement that the focus needed to be on these key areas because we know they were the most difficult ones for citizens. There are other infrastructure issues we needed to address, and we did those, but flooding, sewer backups in homes, clean water, no spills from our water treatment plant into the creek. Those are all top priorities, and they were always there before we set any other objectives or any other projects that we tackled. So again, we planned this long before I left as mayor, which was December 2020, and set the financing in motion. Another thing is we made sure our finances were in outstanding shape. Sheila has done an outstanding job with staff and under Jason's rule, and under Chris's rule and under John Kennedy rule to make sure our financial picture was excellent. And it is. Matter of fact, the AAA bond rating was built from that effort many years ago. And because of that, the cost of our issuing bonds are significantly less. And so once we get phase one and phase two completed, which we have the financing pretty much set up for that, then we got to take a pause because 3, 4, and 5 are also going to be expensive. But I know the TERS will be coming off in a few years. The TERS is what we put together for Fred Griffin, our developer. And once that comes off, that's another significant amount of money that'll become available because we're no longer having to contribute to Town Square that we can use to get more financing or finance more projects to finish phase 3, 4, and 5. So that's just of water sewer lines. I mean, we got many more. We have streets. We have security. We need a new ladder truck for the fire department. These are all big ticket items that are in line to be done. But we know first priority is flood remediation, flooding, water treatment, and sewer.
And when does the TERS come offline? I had not checked the date on that.
You would ask me that. I think it's 25 or 2026 but don't hold me to it. But I know it's for the next 3 to 4 years.
That sounds right.
For those that don't know how a TERS works, you basically make an agreement, and the property tax on there is basically pre-improvement that the developer pays or who the owner of the property pays. And then when that gets lifted, then it goes up to whatever the current value is. So that will be new revenue into the city. Lucie, we go to you then, since you brought up the infrastructure stuff. I know it's an important part of your campaign now. What do you want to see infrastructure improve? And there's also accountability on projects, and you heard Mark talk about it. It takes a while. It never happens overnight, as much as we'd all like it to happen. If elected council, what are you going to be looking forward to pressing on, and also seeing that things get done And are there things that aren't in the plans that you'd like to see happen?
So the biggest thing, I've had a backhoe in my front yard in the middle of the night, same thing, blow up my driveway. I understand the frustration with what we have going on with the water lines and the sewer lines. And it's important to me that that's something that we get fixed. When you drive down the road and you see a water line leaking into the street and you understand, hey, I know why it's doing that, it really makes you think about the importance of this infrastructure in our community. And if we want to be here another 50 years, we have really got to get these water and sewer lines improved. I like the plans that are in place, but I also understand that with these large projects, there can be changes, unexpected things that come up. And I want to make sure that we're paying attention to that so that we are the best stewards we can be of the city's money and the most successful that we can be in making this project work for everybody. The thing that I really, the water treatment plant, I am interested in that. I don't have anything, I guess, in particular that I'm concerned about. I know that there's been a lot of improvements there, but the biggest area that I worry about is just stormwater mitigation. I don't like it when I see my own street flooded. I don't like it when I feel like I can't drive into the neighborhood because we aren't handling our stormwater very well. And let alone the big storms that have come up when I've helped my grandma muck out her first floor during Ike. That kind of thing. It's really frustrating to see what stormwater can do in this city. And I want to make sure that we're staying on top of it. Yes, there are going to be large events like Ike and Harvey where it's going to be hard to really control it. But we also have these flooding events when we have heavy rains that aren't associated with a named storm. I want to make sure that we stay on top of stormwater mitigation. I want to understand what people have done in the past, what we can do to improve upon that in the future and stay on top of it. I'm also interested in joining the Texas Floodplain Management Association so I can have a better understanding of projects that other people are doing, what kind of programs are available, to understand how we can mitigate our own floodplain within the city, and also get some insight into what's going on with the Harris County Flood Control District upstream in Clear Creek, because that has a huge impact on our community.
Bob, also to you now, talking about infrastructure, roads, water, and sewer in particular. How do you think the plan is being handled now? What would you like to see implemented that's not right now? And and how do we plan for the future down the line? Because knowing that we're going to see more needs done.
Well, I think as Mark said, most of all the city's infrastructure needs are already planned out and beginning. The future phases of the water and sewer line replacement will need to be addressed in the next 2 years. And as you can see, the staff, we just hired a new employee, Elias Jahan, who is going to be our new asset project manager and is very well versed on infrastructure. And everybody uses infrastructure as a buzzword, and it is very, very important for a town our age. And we have to be involved with other people around us. And as Mark said, that's one of the keys, that people are around us involved with the Ike Dike, for instance, is something that we can look at down the road, long range planning, to where Nassau Bay needs to be involved in flood mitigation. Thank you.
And Michelle, you heard Lucie's story about it. I mean, it's getting to the point now that these projects may be so expensive that maybe the city should give everyone a backhoe to put in their backyard on their own to fix their stuff. There are times that it looks like that's what we have everywhere. But as you look at infrastructure and the like, what are your goals to see if elected to council? What's being done now that you think, all right, that's really solid, but what do you think needs to be improved upon?
Well, I haven't had quite the experience that Lucie has had, but I have had the water sewage smell and, my next door neighbor. I've had the city truck out here with a hose, hosing stuff out. So I definitely do, like everybody else, I think we're all on the same page when it comes to the infrastructure of the roads and the flooding and the water mitigation. We have been very fortunate at our street. I mean, the water has come up to like close to my door, but it hasn't come in, which has been nice. But I have volunteered and cleaned out some of the houses that did flood really badly during some of our hurricanes and our flood waters. I would like for the the waters to flow a little bit faster. I mean, even if my street floods, I mean, it's gone within a couple of hours, but it's still a little bit scary in the fact that, like one of the other candidates was saying, it's kind of hard when you can't even drive out of your own road to get anywhere. So that is definitely something that's important to me, just like everybody else, because our homes are older. So we do need the repair on the streets and the sewer system and the water treatment plants and all of that. But one of my other concerns, which is a little bit off topic probably, is how people speed through Upper Bay Road. So I would like to probably see some kind of like something on the road that people are not allowed to go 35, 40 miles an hour on that street, or some of our streets where, we don't have sidewalks. So a lot of times we are walking on the street, riding our bikes on the street. So to me, that's a safety hazard. And that is something that I wish that we could also add to the plan if we can. I know everything is expensive. And like the former mayor said, I do know that things don't get done within a year, that it does take time. But with bringing a lot of new families into the area and having little kids around, we want them to feel safe, and we want to control that traffic and that speed on Upper Bay Road. I mean, it gets out of control sometimes. So I would like to see some speed bumps or something brought to the table to that sort as well.
And that is part of infrastructure. So it's not off topic at all in talking about roads. In fact, I'm going to come back around to that a little bit, because it's actually, I was sent a question, someone wanted me to ask about this. So I'm glad you brought it up. Matt, let me ask you here on the infrastructure needs. You're on council now and hope to be reelected. We lost you, Matt. We lost your camera. Hey, you're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had an incoming call. So
I got you. No problem. No problem.
My apologies.
But what's being tackled, do you think, well, and what do you think is on the horizon that you'd like to see get done a little bit faster?
Yeah, like Mark was saying, I think that when I first joined council is when the water line replacements really started getting kicked off, as we were looking at that project, how to get funding, et cetera. And it takes a long time. We're 4+ years into it, and we're finally seeing some of the work done. And I've got holes dug in my backyard as proof, which is great progress. So I think that continuing to make sure that the equipment that we have in place to mitigate some of the flood concerns, the pumps, the power systems, the backup generators, all of those things are working appropriately has been a huge focus on council since I've been on, and it continues to be so. And I think that's one of the ways that we're really going to be able to continue to address some of the flood concerns. The other thing that I'm really excited about Paul coming into the city manager is him reaching out and developing relationships with the other cities in and around Bay Area. And I think that we are all fairly small towns, and it's a really important network to be connected to, so that when one piece needs help, all of us can jump in and help support one another, and we can be working on projects sort of in concert and building, again, those relationships. So when the Clear Creek water system is making a bunch of improvements and then coming with a huge bill that the city has to absorb in a short period of time, is that there's sort of strength in numbers and being able to push back and really hold some of our state and other parts of the government accountable for some of the decisions they've made and some of the failures they've had. So I think that that's another part of the city manager role that's really, really important.
There was a part that Michelle brought up that, and I can bring a personal account to this, as I said, Nassau Bay, Upper Bay. There are times, I will say, it seems like it's a raceway. Folks heading down to David Braun Park, and the like, and to the point that we avoid it when we're walking anywhere with the dogs or anything like that, because we're not a town of sidewalks. It wasn't developed that way. Let me start with you on this one, Bob. Would you support the idea that Michelle brought up of putting in maybe a lower speed limits on some of the roads, and that it comes with more enforcement, but also maybe speed bumps? I know firefighters don't like me to say speed bumps because they don't like the fire trucks going over speed bumps. But let me ask you, Bob. Let me start with you on that, and we'll go around with everybody on this one.
Well, if you think Upper Bay Road is bad, you should live on Nassau Bay Drive.
Okay, and I should point out Nassau Bay Drive it can be that way too.
I mean, come on, that's an in and out of Nassau Bay at 55 miles an hour, and get out of the way if you're walking down the street with the grandkids like I do all the time. But yes, we do need to do something. There are Upper Bay Road, Nassau Bay Drive, even going to the park. We take our grandkids to the park at least 2-3 times a week, and you can get run over in the park, as we all know. But speed bumps, the fire department and the police department have a different set of values when it comes to speed bumps. So I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. Michelle brings up a good point, though. but we do need to do something because you can get run over walking around.
Yeah, that's right. Nassau Bay Drive is another
Yes.
one. That's why I always joke. I'm glad our golf cart has a little more speed to it than to avoid that. Lucy, I'm sure you've seen this. When you're out and about as well. How about Michelle's idea about let's get, and again, it comes with you got to have the enforcement too, but speed limits,
Right.
and maybe start there or.
I would definitely want to start with enforcement. I'm not sure how I feel about speed bumps, to be honest. I do know that even Point Lookout, don't forget that one too. There are times when I make my kids ride their bikes in planned routes where I know that they're not going to be in the high risk areas. And so just the fact that I have to say that should be of concern, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
I definitely agree we need to find ways to control people who are in the neighborhood speeding. Whether or not it's speed bumps, I'm not sure if it's lower speed limits, if it's more enforcement, but I'm definitely open to the idea of making our streets safer for pedestrians, kids on bikes, anyone who wants to walk their dog.
Matt, would you be willing to get the speed limits lowered and then encourage the chief and his officers to enforce safe driving, if anything, particularly on those main thoroughfares, Point Lookout, Nassau Bay Drive, and Upper Bay?
No, I think it's a good point. To answer the first part of the question, I don't know if a change in speed limit is going to make that big of a difference. There are signs posted for 10 miles an hour going into the park, and I've routinely seen that violated. But as far as the enforcement is concerned, if you take a look at the specific stats that the chief will share at the monthly council meetings, Upper Bay drives a significant amount of activity. And I think that it is heavily monitored by our police department. They've been doing a fantastic job. And there's always the one-offs. And I'm not going to say that Upper Bay is not a problem, because it is. We've looked at a variety of different mitigation options, and that is one thing that gets a lot of input from the community. And I don't know if we've got a final solution. I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I think ultimately we're going to have to look at essentially shrinking the size and width of that road by maybe putting some medians down the middle, and really just trying to narrow down the lanes a little bit on both sides, and really just forcing drivers to slow down and be more cognizant of how quickly they're going. So it's there again. There's not an easy answer, or we would have done it already. It's a fairly complicated and expensive solution that we're going to have to continue to talk about.
I remember growing up in Texas City, Texas, when City Commission tried to do everything. Finally, this lady that lived on the end of our block just finally went out there on her own to just start posting signs and taking photos of cars as they sped by, posting on the billboard. This long before internet, she'd go down to City Hall and post them. Mark, how to deal with I think that's I do hear from a lot of residents about people speeding through, driving recklessly, whether it's folks heading to the park, UPS or FedEx trucks, all of the above. What would you encourage as mayor?
I did encourage, there's all types of speed restrictors, not just bumps or sleeping policemen, a lot of people call them. There's different ways to get drivers' attention, especially just vibrating their wheels as they go by, not necessarily slowing them down, but making them well aware that you're going too fast. We need to do more of that. I know I've brought it up for years and got a lot of pushback from the same groups, fire department and PD and even city manager, because he felt more people were against it. But I'm glad to hear everyone echoing the same thing that I feel, is that there are better ways than just hiring more policemen. By the way, I did hire 2 more policemen under my administration and increased the police budget by almost 15% across the board, and lowered your tax rate that same year. So I know about making sure our policemen are okay, but adding 2 more policemen is very expensive. And frankly, we don't want them just out there monitoring speed. We got so many other things we want them doing. So there is better methods for providing speed restrictors on streets than just a speed bump. And I would certainly jump into that more if I felt council had the backbone and would back me in looking at that.
Well, Michelle, you got us down on this path there. I was glad to tell you. Mark brings up a good point, is that you didn't hear about, when I first moved out of here, I did not hear a lot about that. But then as more and more, and no offense to anyone that's of older age watching this here, but as more and more young families moved into this community, with kids and stuff, that became top of their mind. And I was hearing it more. So what would you propose on council, Michelle, if elected, to deal with that issue?
Well, I mean, I agree with what we're saying about, not wasting our great police resources, necessarily policing the speed limit. Because again, I mean, you have one person police it, but somebody else breaks it down, or you police it at the beginning of the road, and towards the park, they're speeding again. And I understand what the fire department and the police department say. When I lived in other places, I had a Honda Prelude, and every time I had a speed bump, I could hear my muffler scraping away on that speed bump. So I totally get it. But at the same time, we have to think of the safety of our children and the future of Nassau Bay. So I'm not talking about putting a speed bump, every 5 feet or anything like that, but at least something that people understand. Hey, listen, you're entering this area, you need to slow down, or your car is just going to be destroyed, or whatever that may be. I'm definitely open to solutions, but even some of the high areas like Rice Village and River Oaks, I mean, they have speed bumps in certain areas. So, I mean, it's just something that unfortunately we are going to have to look at a different way to handle the speed limit. I mean, because people just don't listen and they just don't follow the rules. And our parks are so attractive to people that they just come through and they don't really pay any attention. And, I can go on and on and on about other things, but I'm just going to end it there. So.
It's a great topic to talk about. It is a topic that meets that kind of, how you feel in your community. And Michelle, you bring up a great point that if you go to David Braun Park, I mean, a lot of folks who do not live in Nassau Bay use that park. It's a great resource. They're playing basketball, they're playing tennis, they're feeding the ducks and the geese, and they're, just enjoying the dog park even. And then not that I've seen anyone use the dog park that's not from the city without their tags, but in any case, let me get into another topic that's been hot kind of around the region, and it was hot topic for a while, then kind of weighed back, but it's about short-term rentals. We are a waterfront community here in Nassau Bay, and we have seen, particularly over this Easter weekend, there was a big party at and I can't remember what state it was in, but a shooting that happened because of a big party. We've seen it in Manville last week as well. Pearland just adopted more of a crackdown on short-term rentals. The city of Galveston has just gotten to the point now they're being able to figure out on their hot tax size. That's a big deal for them too, but it's kind of changed many of the communities. And we have a mix here in Nassau Bay where you've got residential built as residential, and then some other homes that are waterfront and the like that would seem to be more touristy, but they're all, someone could go on any street and do that. I'll start with you, Matt, because right now the way the ordinance is, you've got to register if you're going to do a short-term rental. You've got to pay your license. You got to be licensed and the like. And then the hot tax, the hotel motel tax is collected. But do you think there needs to be more done on that, Matt, moving forward?
I think it's a good question, TJ. I was on the task force that developed the regulations as they are now, and I think that it's giving us a lot more visibility to the exact number of short-term rentals or STRs that we have in the community now. We've put in some requirements to register so that we can do some audits from a safety perspective, which I think is really important. And, I think that we're able to keep sort of tabs on the STRs that are, being used frequently. We can increase police presence, through that visibility. And so I think that we're making some really good strides here in the last year and a half that those regulations have been in place.
Is there something you would like to see that's another overlay? Obviously, there's a lot with state law that I think a lot of folks may not realize that there's not state law really kind of favors, people doing what they want with their property. So knowing that, but what do you see that could be done that hasn't been kind of approached yet?
Yeah, that's really one of the pieces that adds a level of complexity to managing STRs, is not overstepping what we are allowed to do as a city due to the state requirements, because Austin has done a lot in this space and has really made it sort of a moving target as of late. So I think that it's continuing to utilize the third-party vendor that will go out and scrape all of the different websites that individuals are using to register to rent these homes on a short-term basis, and really get a better understanding of sort of who's doing what, and just to make sure that we continue to monitor the activity levels. And since that's been implemented, we've really seen an improvement in sort of some of the previous abuses that we've had from a short-term rental perspective. So I think that just continuing to have city manager and staff focus on management of the program we've got in place, and then adjust as needed as we go along, is really what's needed at this point.
Lucie, it becomes a quality of life issue for many people. Short-term rentals look great to someone who may own the property and not be vested in the community, or even if they are, but for sometimes their neighbors, depending on who's moved in, and someone doesn't have as much respect for the like. How do you look at it? What would you like to see in the ordinance that goes beyond what's there right now?
One of the things that I actually do like about the ordinance that is there now is the added accountability for the owners of the property. So someone can't just go in and buy a property and not have that level of accountability with the city itself, not just with the people that are renting the property. I like how the ordinance requires certain number of bathrooms per person, parking per person, to make it more, I guess, safe for the community around it. But I think we need to just continuously review these things to make sure that the ordinances that we have in place are what the citizens want, and that it's addressing some of the problems that we're having. But right now, the added accountability that's in that ordinance is something that I really like seeing, because ultimately that's who owns the house. That's your neighbor that's putting the short-term rental next to you, and they should be the ones that have to answer to something if it goes wrong.
Bob, I know this is a topic that you've seen debated many a time, but what's your take on it?
Well, first of all, what I'd like to do is the way the current ordinance reads right now, the annual fee is $300. So someone has to come to City Hall and apply for an annual fee of $300. To me, $300, don't get me wrong, is not enough money. If we made it higher, that would make a difference. Also, the second part of that is we can revoke their permit after three citations are issued in a 12-month period. In other words, if we have police called out more than 3 times, we can revoke their permit. The next time they get to if they have to renew that permit, we should make it $1,000 or something, make it higher, then make it harder for these people to keep these places going. As it is now, you pay $300, you get called out 3 times. Oh, I got to go reapply again. It's $300. It's not but a drop in the bucket. I would like to see that change, and I would propose that if I were on city council.
Gotcha. Michelle, same question to you about short-term rentals.
Well, I actually agree with Bob, and that we probably do need to raise the fee to get that particular permit. I mean, in TJ, in the instances you brought up this weekend, I mean, there were mass shootings at some of those short-term rentals, and the only thing that Airbnb said was like, oh, we banned that person from ever being able to do a short-term rental on our website again. I mean, that's just not enough. I mean, do you want some kind of tragedy happening before we make a change? And I don't agree that it needs to be 3 times and you're out. I think if you can't have it together the first time, then that needs to be it for you. We just can't afford to have people move here for the quiet and the beautiful and the aspect of it. We just can't have somebody paying $1,000, renting a short-term rental, having a party, and disrupting neighbors. I mean, that's not what people want to live in this community for. So I definitely agree with what Bob is saying, but I think it needs to be even stricter. I mean, I agree with what Lucie's saying as well, as like we have the ordinance and we should tighten that up. But I really would just like to see it tighten even more to where it makes it a little bit more difficult for people to be able to even get that, even get to that part. Because again, I don't want to see something tragic before we have to make a drastic change.
Would it be something then, Michelle, you would support maybe the 3 strikes, you're out if it's kind of minor stuff, but if it's something like what we saw where there's a party gets way out of hand, someone gets wounded, or a felony happens there, that's a 1 strike and you're out type of proposal then?
Yes. I mean, I do know some people that live in Ball Harbor, and that's what happened next to them. Somebody had rented a townhouse. It was a bunch of kids, and the cops came over, and the kids just started running rampant through the streets when the cops showed up. I mean, how does that keep that person from doing that same thing again? I just think it's, and and again, we don't live in the neighborhood because we want to have rowdy parties next to us. And then you don't know what's going to happen at that party. You don't know if your kid could be sleeping and all of a sudden there's a shootout or some kind of violence attack on somebody. I mean, you just don't want to be around that. And I think that just can be controlled. I mean, it's kind of hard because you don't want to keep people from making money. I mean, that is their property, but at the same time, you want to make it in a safe, and you want to make it a safe environment. You just can't make it where anybody can rent it and minors can be in there doing whatever they want to do.
Right. It's always as the line goes. You're the reason we can't have good things. Sometimes the line comes up. Mark, short-term rentals. How would you approach it if elected back to be mayor? Your mic is turned off, Mark.
I'm sorry. I've been losing connectivity for brief seconds, and I just happened for about 3 seconds. So just in case I'm not available, I'm not sure what's going on.
Gotcha.
But anyway, short-term rental. I chaired the first task force. I championed on council because I have a short-term rental boarding house 5 houses down from my house and in the neighborhood right there by the peninsula. And it's been a sore subject with me and especially my neighbors because I hear about them all the time. So when we formed this committee, Matt and Ashley was with me, we were discussing all these options. And there was pushback on council of doing too much to restrict people's rights to use their property. Even our city attorney warned us about it's a taking is the term they use in legal terms. And you got to be careful about property rights and what you can do. Well, so we were going through these things, coming up with these guidelines, addressing what Austin will allow. We're looking at what other cities were doing. Staff was doing a great job kind of lining up the options we had. And it was moving well. And we were getting ready to have probably our 3rd meeting. And all of a sudden, we had a weekend shooting at a house. Everybody here probably knows about it. Somebody fired 20 or 30 shots over a house because they were angry when they left. It was a short-term rental. Well, it was an epiphany on council because all of a sudden everybody said we can't do enough to restrict people from taking advantage of short-term rentals. And so we proposed ordinances. Council looked at it and they actually jumped in and made some of them even tougher. And that's when we first got our ordinance started. Now, Austin is continually making changes to what cities can do and what they can't do. And I applaud other cities that are really pushing the edge because we don't want to be the first one to get a lawsuit, from an attorney thinking we're restricting property rights. So Pearland, I've heard other cities doing it. If I was as mayor, I'd be watching real closely to what they're doing and making sure we're following exactly what they're doing to make sure we have all the rules in place that we possibly can.
Yeah. And we should point out on that shooting that Mark was talking about that actually it's where the folks who were renting the place, some people showed up that weren't invited and they told them to leave. And then that's when they opened fire based on the official police report. So that's one in which, Michelle, we talked about is that how do you decide which is the offense of the property owner, which is the offense of their people, but it still gets into it's there's not kind of a cookie cutter. It actually becomes complex. And as Matt pointed out earlier, you get into the issues of what the state law will allow you to do, and it gets real restrictive at some points. One other, this kind of flows into another one is the topic of code enforcement, unkept properties, and not only just residential. We have this is coming up at council meetings a lot now. I know about complaints of folks just not keeping up their houses, letting them get dilapidated. There's been various proposals, but also too in which would be classified under commercial properties, the apartment complexes. I know that Sapphires, for one, it's been under the target of many folks that are just complaining about how upkeep looks there, how the trash gets overflowed and the like, and the other apartment complexes. So let me start with you, Bob, on this one is that on code enforcement all, because we'll probably be on this one. This will be our last question before we get in our closing statements for everybody. But how should that be approached? And if you could address specifically the residential side of things first, and then get into about the apartment complexes and the like too, of how code enforcement needs to be handled in Nassau Bay.
Well, it's very simple, TJ. We have a code which says if a structure becomes unsafe or unfit for human occupancy, such structures should be condemned. I mean, I look at some of these things for over 2 years. We've been talking about, let's just use the 1302 Antigua. That house has been condemned for over 2 years. And why haven't we done anything with it? It sits there and sits there and sits there. It's maybe because council was so busy worrying about who was coming to work on time and who wasn't in the morning. And we're not worrying about the big stuff, and that's what's not happening. Also, if you look at our current website, Kingstree Court, which is May's house, the old astronaut's house, it's not even listed on our website as a property that's a problem. Nothing has been done in 2 years, and I'm sure Mark will touch upon it, but he can talk about how many houses got condemned and how many actually got taken down under Mark's rule as the mayor. I mean, something has got to be done. We can't let these things sit and go on and on and on for year after year after year. I think we're making progress on the apartment side of it. At the last city council meeting, the chief made some real progress. So again, it's a matter of waiting to see what's going to happen there. But on some of these houses, if they're dilapidated and it's going to be, someone's going to walk on that property and something's going to fall down and hurt somebody. And then the city's going to be really in trouble. I just don't understand why something doesn't get done.
What if you're on council, what are you going to do to make sure that things get done?
Condemn it, have it torn down. We voted on it twice. The last three council meetings, they voted on Antigua and said, yes, let's tear it down. Now a new owner comes in and says, gee, I just found out that I bought the property, but I didn't know it was condemned. This is what the lady said at the last city council. So city council says, okay, we'll give you another 30 days.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like a whack-a-mole. I know.
Nassau
Bay is not the only city that has to deal with that.
I can't believe somebody would actually buy a piece of property and not know that it was condemned and falling down.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the case, that lady should be suing somebody. But again, our city council now suffers. I would hate to think my grandkids walk around on their bike and go drive by that house and the darn thing falls on top of them. I mean, and that's what's going to happen at Kingstree Court. We've had a problem with that house for over 20 years. Right. Look at the one on Baycrest Drive. I mean, we can go on and talk about residential all you want. Wait till you get to the commercial side of it.
Right. And because that's what I was talking about on those things. Michelle, on code enforcement, you heard what Bob had to say there. It is becoming a topic more and more. You know, it used to be every once in a while you hear, hey, can someone do something about this? But there's also a balance of, you know, how strict do you get on code enforcement? Do you wait till it gets bad, or you encourage folks ahead of time? You know, what do you think needs to be done in Nassau Bay?
Well, I mean, I'm not as well versed in this topic. I was at the last city council meeting where that lady said, you know, unfortunately, she bought a property that didn't know it was condemned. I kind of blame the realtor, to be honest with you, for not disclosing that information. And I did hear about the astronaut's house, and, you know, people come back and talk about that. I do think that if that issue has been going on for 2 years, that something does need to be done. My only question is, you know, to what cost and who pays for that, of course. And I'm sure people just want to understand a little bit more about, you know, tearing it down and how much that is going to cost the city. I mean, I live on a street where there's an empty lot a couple of streets down from me, and I can only imagine what happened there. You know, I don't know the full story, but I do think that it's important for people to kind of keep up with their houses. And if they can, we need to kind of have a solution and kind of come up with how we can help them, if at all possible, to tear it down. And if an issue has been going on for 20 years, that is a concern, because that is taking more than, I mean, that's been a couple of mayors in city council and still nothing has been done about it. So I do think that something like that needs to be taken care of right away.
Lucie, on code enforcement, unkept property. Oh, Michelle, let me come back to you though about, we've talked about residential. How about, you know, there are issues, and I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression. I'm asking about apartment complexes because of the folks that live there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Making it safe for them too.
Okay, yes, and I'm sorry that I skipped that part.
No, it's my fault for not following up with you on that.
That is kind of dear to my heart in a way. Listen, at the last city council meeting, some people suggested that we needed to just condemn them and tear them down. You cannot leave people without a home. You have to have a different plan. Technically, they are neighbors. They are Nassau Bay individuals. They pay rent there. So I, like Bob mentioned, I know the chief of police had a lot of good things to say about the new management, specifically at one of the apartments. I haven't gone into the townhouses and how some of those don't look that great either. But I think as a city, we need to flourish and we need to help people fix those issues. We need to do something. We need to hear those individuals as well, because again, they are paying to be in our city. And believe me, when I was in college, I lived in some questionable apartments as well. But we have to give people a chance, and I think that's the reason why I don't feel tearing them down is going to be the solution. Because even if you put nice apartments up, bad things happen in nice apartments as well. So we just need to embrace what we have and just beautify it, make it better, work with management, and see how we can help them at the end, help us as well.
And we should point out, any nice apartment starts out that way, doesn't always stay that way. And I can't remember the name of it now, but we should point out Apollo 17 astronaut Fritz Schmidt lived in an apartment complex here in Nassau Bay that is now on its kind of later legs there, and that was very luxurious back when he did that. Let me go now to you, Lucie. Sorry, I wanted to follow up with Michelle on that topic as well. Same topic to you, Lucie.
So the city is getting older, and we're having an increased frequency of dilapidated properties, not just because of the age of the properties, but just the conditions that come with when we have stormwater, things like that. So what we really need to start doing is tracking the properties that we've been talking about to understand, hey, yeah, this one we have been having an issue with for 20 years. Why is nobody doing anything about it? Making sure we're evenly applying the code enforcement, the application of what we do, as well as the timing that we're holding all these properties to. And if people are trying to make progress or not making progress makes a big difference. When it comes to things like the apartments, I just really feel like we're doing a disservice to the residents by not holding the owners accountable to code enforcement. And I know that we're working on making strides in those areas, but we really need to make sure that what we're doing for those people who live in those apartments is for the best for everybody. So holding to those same codes, there are proper living conditions for people. Let's make sure that those apartments are giving people the quality of life that they deserve in these places that they rent in our city.
Got it. Matt, I know you probably get an earful at every council meeting now on these, and even outside the council meeting, I'm sure you got many emails. How do you rate the progress city is on keeping track of this? And is it like Bob has said that not enough is getting done, or do you think movements are being made? One of the things we should point out, there's a couple of state Supreme Court decisions that kind of slow down some of those condemnation processes and tear down. It's not as simple as, hey, we're condemned, we're tearing you down. There can something that happens afterwards a lot of times.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. So to answer the question, I think there's more that we can be doing, but we also need to realize that if it's not like council can just say, hey, we're going to tear down this house in 30 days. There is an extensive process that has a lot of legal involvement, the building inspectors, posted notices, et cetera, that you have to go through before you ever get to the point of, condemning a building or even potentially ripping it down. So there's a lot of detail that I'm, not the expert on by any means. And I think that it's important to talk about what's happening with the Sapphire. Is that's a property that it takes the city, I've seen, about 1.5 to 2 years to get to the point where we're really being able to be able to make changes because of the laws and regulations that we have to follow. And the ownership is always flipping every 6 or 9 months, it seems like. And then when that happens, you have to start all over again. And that's really where I think we've been chasing our tail a little bit. The most recent owner that came about in late March of this year really seems to be serious about making some improvements. What's given me some optimism is that they immediately brought in some individuals to fix the air conditioning, the hot water. They are moving residents out of the worst apartments to try to get them into more livable conditions. They are not holding anyone to lease cancellations. They're allowing people to leave if they so choose. And there's a variety of actions that they're taking that gives me some reason to be optimistic about improvements they're going to make to the infrastructure there.
And should point out too, I know of this from just dealing with other communities, that a lot of folks don't realize too, is that the way the state laws work, particularly when it comes to apartment complexes and the like. There is actually and I'm not going to name names here, a state representative who's an attorney who represents a lot of these apartment owners, who is writing the legislation.
He owns them. He owns them.
And he owns them too. And I should point out there, and he's not, this is kind of clear, it's not one of our local representatives. I just want to point that out. But I know that I've heard this from other cities. They're running into problems there because they're getting sued by the person who actually wrote the laws out there. So that becomes a trouble for them. Same question to you then, Mark.
Well, first talk about code enforcement. Under my administration, we designated 10 homes in Nassau Bay that we said were dilapidated, clearly abandoned. These homes were flooded in Ike, and many of them had remained abandoned up to 10 years. So we did a top 10 list. I was successful in resolving 7 of them, 4 teardowns, 3 remodels. There's 3 remaining. They're troubling, but I know because our attorneys have been distracted doing other things. I don't think they've been focused on these 3 homes, because I think they would have been done by now if it had been an effort to focus on those. And Balboa, Sapphire, that's the biggest frustration of my political career. I can tell you, as Matt said, they are flipping ownership. I've personally toured the owner, Ellen Weinstein, when she owned it back in 2015, 2016, around the city, talking to her about investing more or tearing it down, allowing us to acquire it and rebuild. And she was saying, yes, yes, yes. 30 days later, she sold it to another individual in New Jersey. And we heard the same thing what this new owner is telling Matt in the city now. And they did everything right early on. And that was just a couple years ago. Now look at it. And I don't have much faith in the new owner, but time will tell. So I've got the experience of dealing with these folks, especially on homes. And as mayor, I'll see that these 3 homes are remedied, just like I saw the first 7 of my top 10 list.
I want to thank you all for being a part of this tonight. And I know that Lucie joked when we were having a conversation before we got, there's no way we'll go 90 minutes. We're almost there. By the way, I should point out, Lucie, for that. But it's been lively. Thank you all so much, and great answers from everyone. We did not do this beforehand, but I want to do it now. So I have picked a number between 1 and 50. I will start with Lucie first. This is going to determine what order you guys go in to make
42.
42 for you. All right, Lucie. Michelle?
8.
8. Bob?
26.
26. Matt?
Position 6.
Aha, there you go. And Mark?
35.
35. Okay, so I'm just going to show. I wrote this down a long time ago. It was the number 37. We're going to do like Price is Right rules here. The closest without going over gets to choose where you want to go for your final pitch on things, first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. There. So, Mark, you're closest to that number I picked without going over. Where would you like to give your final pitch at?
First, please.
You want to go first? Okay. Next closest then, without going over, was Bob. Where would you like to go? Second, third, fourth, or fifth?
I'd like to go now and get it done with.
Well, first is already taken care of, Mark.
Oh, did he say first? I
Yeah,
thought
he said first. You
Well,
want to go second?
I'll go
Okay,
second.
you go second. All right. Then close without going, Michelle.
I'll go third.
Third. All
Yes.
right. And then it was Matt.
Wherever you want to put me, TJ. I'm happy to be here.
All right, we'll just do fourth, and then Lucie, you go last.
I'll bring it home. Sounds good.
There you go. I like that approach. All right, again, up to 3 minutes for each of you. Thank you all for being part of this here tonight. And for those of you watching, we do have the candidates for position 4 coming up at about 7:15 here. So I ask the other candidates, go ahead and mute your microphones for this part. We're going to let Mark Denham go first, candidate for mayor. Mark?
Thanks, TJ. This city council and mayor election on May 7th will be one of the most consequential elections in our city's 52-year history. There is a clear, widespread dissatisfaction with a number of members on council in regards to their actions over the past several months. The city has been in turmoil. I've been involved in city council meetings for almost 20 years now. 2 of the 3 last council meetings were the worst I've ever witnessed. Anyone else attending, would almost have to agree. So with the potential of 3 new council members and a new mayor being sworn in, it's going to take a strong, full-time, experienced leader to fix the many problems the city has, the divisiveness has caused. And when I say full-time, I recently retired, so I'm able to devote much more of my time to remedy the issues we're facing. And we add in a new city manager, and we really have a tough task of keeping everything on par. You know, we got to right the ship, bring in harmony back to council, a respect for decorum in council chamber. Again, I'm the candidate most capable of doing that, and in short order. I was mayor pro tem and mayor over the last 2 city master transitions, which I've talked about before. And my proven methods in building consistency on council and gaining buy-in from staff has worked well in my administration. And I use the same methods when I was chief operating officer of my company and also chairman of the industry association my competitors elected me to. Now, unfortunately, I have to take up a minute of your time to address some of the issues that people have waged against me. First, apartments. I do not approve of adding any new apartments until we resolve the issues of the ones we have, period. And we are a long ways from doing that with those apartment complexes, as I talked about before. For almost a year as mayor, as my years as mayor, I never encouraged apartments. Matter of fact, we talked to our developer many times, Don and Bob and Phil and Gary Mossman. We all kept saying to Fred, no more apartments. And so we were in unison of that, and they all know that. And it's an end of story until we get this. And so Fred now is talking differently. We always said either condos or office buildings. So with COVID waning, Fred is now talking about office buildings, which I think is a much more palatable opportunity for that property. And second, never in any way did I ever suggest that we rezone church property. It's just not something I would ever done. That was the biggest pants on fire accusation I've ever heard. Shame on them for even bringing that up. Now, there is an instance where Gloria Day brought to the city several years ago an interest in developing land south of their church. They were going to put in high-rise, high-density townhomes. And, you know, a council, I know I was a little queasy about that because of the density they were proposing in a neighborhood. And it never came to the planning commission, as I understand it, never came to council, and it went away. I don't know what happened, but again, that may be where this came from. But at no time did I ever encourage or look at doing anything to rezone church properties.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it, sir. And then now up, Bob Wilkinson, up to 3 minutes for you, sir. Oh, hang on, Bob. I'll start your time over. I turned your mic off for a second. There you go. All right, Bob, you can go now.
All right. I just want to say thank you, TJ, for hosting this, and appreciate everything you've done. To both Michelle and Lucie, I wish you luck, and let us all continue to keep this a clean election. Like Mark said, the last city council meetings 4 or 5 ago were absolutely abominable. I mean, it is, you hang your head in shame and say, this is what Nassau Bay is. No, I don't think so. It is time for a change. And I hope that we can change things and bring it back to the community that I moved to. I chose to move here. I didn't have to move here. I came here because this is where I wanted to be. I volunteer in this city. I hope this city can move forward. And yes, we do learn from the past, and there's a lot of things we can do in the future to make this a better town. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And Michelle, up to 3 minutes for you, ma'am.
Well, I want to echo what Bob said. TJ, thank you so much for having us in this forum. And I want to wish everybody good luck in the upcoming election. I hear is kind of one of the most exciting ones that we've had in a long time. So I'm just happy to be part of it. As a political rookie, I'm just taking a shot on my own. I'm not retired. I'm a business owner. I'm a mother of a busy 10-year-old. I'm also PTO president, currently at the school at St. Thomas Episcopal School and Church. But if I am elected, I will make time for this. I'm a multitasker, and I'm a person that brings solutions to the problems that we currently have. And I hope that people can regain the trust in the council. I feel like trust has been lost through so many of these different scenarios that have gone throughout the years. And I can definitely be more involved and be more dedicated to the city. And whether if I'm elected or not, I am looking forward to working with everybody towards a solution that everybody can be happy with. I hope that my child grows here, gets married, and brings his future children to Nassau Bay. I think it's a charming community, and I think it has a lot to offer. We just want to make sure we don't get lost and we create new opportunities for new up and coming families that want to move here. So safeties are very concerning for me as a mother of a young child, and as somebody that is constantly trying to attract people to the school and trying to attract people to our community. I just hope that we can keep the charm, keep our kids safe, and keep everybody happy. And like, I hope that city council, whether I'm part of it or not, does right by its citizens and does say what it is going to say. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope everybody has a great night.
Thank you, Michelle. We appreciate your time here tonight as well. Now, Matt Pryor, you're up now, sir. You, oh, hang on, just come out of the stream. Sorry about that, Matt. Up to 3 minutes for you, sir.
Thanks, TJ. Again, I really do appreciate you pulling this together to allow those that are willing to get on camera and really talk about their experience and what they think they're going to bring to council. I think that's really important. And I'm really excited about the opportunity for more transparency and visibility of what the city's doing to all of our residents. At the end of the day, I'm not a politician. I got involved in council, 4+ years ago, just to try to give back to the city, which is a city where I'm raising our kids. I'm gonna be calling home for an extended period of time, and I really want to see the city as a whole move forward and try to put some of the past events behind us. I think it's really important that council continues to listen to staff, listen to our fantastic group of volunteers that are supporting our city activities, and really trying to help, sort of bridge some of those gaps and move the city forward. And I think, this conversation has been really positive all the way around. And I think that that's really encouraging. And I wish that we would have more of that. And I know that there's a number of people on the line right now that are paying close attention to what's being said today. And, unfortunately, we didn't have the opportunity to talk about playground equipment and palm trees and that kind of thing. But I'm looking forward to more discussions.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate your time here tonight and coming in and joining us there. And now, Lucie, as you said it, you get to bring it home here. Although, actually, I get the final word on all these things when you're wrapped up. When you're wrapped up, I got a couple of housekeeping notes there. Up to 3 minutes for you, ma'am.
All right, sounds good. So as I mentioned, I've lived in Nassau Bay since 2006. This is the only place I wanted to live. It's such an amazing community. I have made fantastic friends here. I have so much fun just within the city limits of Nassau Bay. Sometimes I don't even leave on the weekends because there's just so much you can do. I know that's what draws a lot of people to this community, and I want to keep putting forward a positive, happy, fun, great place to live where I can drive my golf cart up to the park and let the kid play on the playground equipment. I really do just enjoy living here. And part of the reason I'm running is because I want to make sure that goes forward, but also I want to make sure that our infrastructure stays strong. I have 3 school-aged kids. I plan on living here for a long time. I want this to be the house that my children grow up in. And so I want to put the time, effort, and energy into making sure that this city stays strong, that our property values remain high, and that it's not a pain to live here, but a pleasure. I'm someone who loves to go around and have fun and learn from the people that have been here, but I want to bring new ideas going forward. I think that this is such an amazing city, and I really care about the future. So when I look forward to working with everyone here, I've just really enjoyed meeting people, but I want you to know that I am not going to vote or do things on city council as part of any kind of group or block. I want to be an independent thinker who really represents the people. I want to be a part of the future of leadership in Nassau Bay, and I think that's really important to carry forward all the great things that we have had in the past and develop new things that we're going to do in the future as a community. So I appreciate everyone for being part of this forum, for the people that are watching, TJ for hosting it. I hope everyone does have a great night, and I will let you bring it home, but just please understand that the love for this community is why I'm doing this.
Thank you all. And as I tell folks that every time I end a forum, that everyone, if you're at home, go ahead and clap for everyone who's running for office here today, because it does take a lot. And particularly when it gets a little contentious, as we have seen, here in Nassau Bay, all of you have touched on that in one way or another. And the hope is that it just, it takes care of itself at some point. A reminder to you voters, early voting starts next Monday, the 25th, and goes through the mid part of the next week, first week of May. And then May 7th is election day. and Nassau Bay being located in Harris County, we'll have a link for you to find your polling locations where you can vote during the early voting period. I know for many people, they've already gotten their mail-in ballots, in fact, as well, if you were eligible for that. So in many ways, people may be already voting out there as well. That's why we try to do this before the folks hit to the polls there. And don't forget. And then just in case on that district position 2 race, if you head to a runoff, I'm going to go ahead and put y'all on the spot now, Bob, Lucie, and Michelle. If there's a runoff, I hope that the 2 of you who are left standing, if there is one, will agree to another forum right before the runoff election here.
Let's do it.
Anytime. Bring it on.
Then I can bring up Matt's palm trees in the like.
Yes.
Really get serious.
Yeah, get serious there. So thank y'all all for being a part of this tonight. And I know we had to pull it together the last minute, but I appreciate it. And we had, and for all full disclosure, folks, we had to make a couple of changes early this morning. Folks were getting an email from me at 5:00 this morning, but everyone responded well, and we appreciate you all for being here tonight. Thank y'all for watching again. Stick around. In about 10 minutes, we'll be on with the candidates from the position 4 race. I'm TJ All. It's I-45 now and Clear Lake now.